You know, I'm thinking that fire looks good, man.
Yeah, dude. It feels nice.
It really does. Oh, hey.
Oh, didn't realize we'd have another guest here.
Hey, glad you guys could make it.
You guys feel the fire? Is it nice and warm? Feels good. It's not January. It's December. So we thought we'd light up the fire and do our first podcast episode right here.
Yeah, I think me and David are inspired by some of the historical progressives inside this country, and one of the most brilliant ideas I think that ever really came out from some of the more progressive people in our politics, FDR in particular. He had this idea when radio was really first becoming popular of a way to talk to the people, and I think that's the goal of this, with our Fireside chats. Fireside chats has already been taken by PragerU, unfortunately. So,
what's really interesting about that is that was really the first time that a president was heard and listened to inside of a home. If you think about it.
And I'll tell you another thing too. Strange dichotomies begin to appear when you compare them to the modern day. He was the first guy that continued to campaign after his campaign was over. Just like Trump, who never stops with his rallies, FDR had a way to continue support.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Fireside Chats. We're really excited for our new podcast series. It's gonna not always just be me and David. Sometimes we'll invite some other people. Hopefully we'll be sitting around campfires in order to do it.
I don't think a third person's gonna fit here.
Yeah, no, we'll have a fire pit or something of the sort. We have a couple of different options, so it'll be really cool. But today, we really wanted to go over just a couple of things. There's a lot going on inside the world. School shooting just occurred.
That Tennessee Supreme Court ruling
Yep.
about gender-affirming care on minors.
We just had the CEO of United, I actually don't even remember the company, but
United Healthcare.
He just got assassinated in the middle of the street. So there is an awful lot to talk about, but I think we'll go ahead and start it off with the head. Trump's new cabinet picks, ladies and gentlemen. He is assembling potentially the scariest cabinet I've ever seen from a single president. Why is that? I hear some of you asking. Well, I think it's because not only is his cabinet valuing loyalty to Trump over competency, and I think you can see that inside certain picks like RFK even, but also inside picks like Elon Musk, who's now getting to make his entire own branch of government, which of course he named after a meme, Doge. I'm sure he's taking this shit seriously.
Yeah, what's really interesting about that is the lack of competency is a good thing if you're a Republican because they're anti-establishment is the thinking, if I'm understanding it correctly. That could be a total straw man of the idea, but as far as I know, the way they look at it is, they're not part of the establishment. Trump is anti-establishment, Elon's anti-establishment, like all these people.
Right.
And so the lack of competency is not really a big issue.
And I think that word anti-establishment is really taking on a new definition nowadays. Because before, anti-establishment might have been like, I kind of, I don't really like what some of the major league Democrats are bringing out, or that sort of thing. Or maybe you would even talk about certain things like the donor class. Now anti-establishment's like, we're going to start tearing shit up. Literally with picks like Kash Patel inside the FBI, a guy who's never been an agent before, by the way, who's saying that he's going to do his best to try to arrest Biden for stealing an election.
Wow.
I mean, this shit's going to be insane. He's saying that he'll help tear apart the government in order to find whoever people he deems guilty. You're already watching them tear apart the government now. Not only the Department of Education, which I think we made a great video about. Go and check that out, that reaction to Matt Walsh.
Yeah.
But they're also destroying things like the FDA, which I think is insane.
Yeah, I mean, we already saw what happened with Trump's first term, and he was pulling back a lot of regulations. And I mean, a lot of reports are coming out where, they're getting recalls for a lot of food because of contaminants. It's really terrible that he's continuing that trend from his first term and doing it 10x from what we can tell.
So I know a lot of my friends out there, I'm sure you have a friend or two, maybe some family members that are very sympathetic to the position of RFK, and they really think that he's going to do something big and good, and I sympathize with those people because to some extent I'm like, God, I so get, like, you're understanding what we've been complaining about now for a while. Like, yeah, I agree with you guys that the FDA does kind of suck. They allow Americans to eat some garbage, and cigarettes are FDA approved, and I think there's some massive problems with the FDA. But the last thing the FDA needs is less funding to be able to authoritize their laws and make sure that they're being used properly. Say what you will about the FDA, but I wouldn't eat at a McDonald's if it wasn't for the FDA. I mean, just keep in mind that McDonald's regularly sues the FDA so that they can get back their regulations further back so they can serve you worse and worse and worse qualities of food.
Speaking of McDonald's, they had an outbreak with their quarter pounders. I can't remember exactly what
I remember that.
Well, what the trueborn illness was, but there was an outbreak with the McDonald's quarter pounder.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny how Trump pulled back regulations in his first term, and now we're seeing that happen.
And who is the people that still told you not to eat there? Does the FDA. Again, if you don't have the Food Drug Administration, what's going to happen is a lot of these places, you're not going to have warnings anymore. You're not going to have botulism warnings. Why would you need them? If restaurants don't have to live up to the regulations of the FDA, I think a lot of people watching this stream have worked in a restaurant. Hopefully you've worked in one. I'm sure you have.
I actually have never worked in a restaurant.
I can tell you one thing that'll blow your mind about a restaurant. Most of those places are dirty. Most people don't wash their hands in between making your foods, and you're very lucky if they're wearing gloves. And again, that's with FDA regulations. And that's how barely they're listened to. Imagine if those regulations were thrown to the wayside and that your corporations didn't even care about them. Well, now you have no incentive to listen to those laws. It's just going to make it for a nastier environment that's going to have less clean food.
Yeah, well, I do take that back, actually. I did work at a pizza joint, but they were actually really clean.
Wow, yeah.
The only thing that was bad was the manager would be like, this salad looks fine. The expected date was like 3 days ago, but I'm gonna go and change the date on the sticker. That was the only bad thing. But honestly, the salad did look fine.
I won't dox any places I've worked at, but I mean, I've seen like a health inspector come in and then everyone quickly go put temperatures and thermometers and everything, because we never temp or thermometer anything, and quickly go move some of that meat around inside the deep freeze because some of those things aren't supposed to be stacked.
Oh my god.
Oh, speaking of more Trump picks, oh my god, I don't even know how I didn't mention this before. Ladies and gentlemen, the bad guys of the boys. Russell Vought just got his Trump pick to the Office of Management and Budget. And that is one of the creators of Project 2025, one of the board members or the CEO, I can't actually remember, of the Heritage Foundation. And, I think there was a lot of talk about Project 2025 before the election, and how, a lot of people were trying to say that they were just stoking fears, the Democrats are just stoking fears, and, well, Trump's not even in yet, and they have made every single promise that the first 7 pages of Project 2025 won. They're lowering regulations that quote-unquote get in the economy's way. They're getting rid of the Department of Education, which I thought was one of the craziest things in there, and they're already promising it left and right and up and down. The FDA is just another small thing. They're talking about completely reworking the way the FBI works and who the people they are going to be investigating. I think it's really clear, guys, this is moving in a bad direction, and it's moving inside a scary direction. What are some of your fears about Project 2025 coming true?
Yeah, sorry, I was looking at my tablet, but I wanted to double check, just to take it back a second. So, Vaught's role in the Heritage Foundation is he's the head of communications.
Oh, okay.
And apparently he was one of the lead architects of Project 2025. But as far as Project 2025 itself goes, there's a lot of really bad stuff in there, obviously. But I think some of the worst are the overtime pay, abortion, Department of Education. I think there was even talks of rolling back Social Security in Project 2025, if I remember correctly.
Disability as well was in there. It said it wanted to get rid of people that live off welfare as well, so it's gonna get rid of a lot of people's money, and I think it's a terrifying world to live in, trying to get rid of all the social safety nets that Democrats have fought so hard for in order to get where they are. And Democrats are also the first to admit that they're not perfect. None of these things are perfect. If I ever lock eyes with someone and they tell me the ACA is perfect, I would laugh at their face. It needs so much more work. But again, I think the problem
more funding.
Right, yeah, exactly. The problem is whenever someone hears, well, this is imperfect, they go, well, we should get rid of it as a Republican side. Versus like, how can we make this better? It needs to be the conversation.
Yeah. I think that kind of goes back to the anti-establishment sentiment that the Republicans are really honusing in on here. Just blowing out the systems that we have in place. And what's really crazy is like you said, Democrats have fought so hard for this. We had an extremely progressive era, from like the 1920s up to the 1960s, 70s, and now that's just been completely undone. And Trump wants to just keep pushing it further and further. And despite the lack in progressive policy in the last 20 or 30 years, we have gotten a couple wins. LGBTQ marriage has been a big one. So
ACA is another big one that happened right around the same time.
Yeah, ACA is another big one. So what really needs to happen is we really need to make sure we're getting progressive candidates in there.
So I agree, and I also wanted to bring up something else for you. I'm very curious on how you feel about this. I've been thinking about this for a while now, and I think Democrats have a problem. What we'll do is we'll get one of those big wins that you just talked about. We'll kind of stop talking about it for a while. And like I just said, I don't think the ACA is perfect. I don't think we ever should have stopped campaigning on healthcare. I don't know what happened in this country, but we should still, like Bernie, I think the reason that people appealed to him so much was because he was like, free healthcare, free college. Those are two massive progressive promises that also fit inside slogans. Like I can see both of those on a poster. I want free college. Or like, the educated should not be limited by poverty. Or you know what I mean? There's like so many ways to say such a powerful and impactful message. A kid that wants to learn shouldn't be limited by money. You know what I mean? There's thousands of reasons that campaign really struck a chord with people because it was like, wow, it's a powerful, gripping message. Money shouldn't be the thing to keep you away from surviving inside a hospital or not. Again, like it's just easy things like that we need to be slamming on because that's what the Republicans do.
And what's really interesting about that is the same Republicans that support Trump for his anti-establishment ideas, those same people agree with some of the Bernie ideas that are anti-establishment.
Have you ever seen that Fox News video where Bernie's on Fox talking to their viewers and he like literally convinces a whole route of people of why social safety nets are good? It's a great video.
I have not seen that, but I should definitely check that out. And I mean, I lost where I was going, but
I'm so sorry. You were talking about Bernie's campaign in general and where his campaign led and how it struck a chord with people.
Oh, it struck a chord with people anti-establishment. Yeah. Right, so the thing that I was trying to lead up to was a lot of Republicans will understand the plight of the everyday man, because they're going through it too, just like we are.
Right.
But what they disagree with is who needs to be in charge of fixing it.
And how we fix it.
And I mean, I guess that's all of what politics comes down to, but it's really odd to me, like it just seems so clear that social safety nets are the answer. Like they are the answer. The reason why, we're broke and we can barely afford groceries or gas or rent is because of laissez-faire capitalism. Mm-hmm. And I think there's some good antitrust stuff that's happening. I know I'm going off script here, but this wasn't exactly a topic, but I don't know if you saw this in the news, but the Google antitrust lawsuits that just happened.
Or they're losing access to Chrome, right?
Yeah. I mean, that is big stuff.
Actually, I have an interesting segue. This is, again, off our script, but that's fine. That's the great part about podcasting, right? What I think is interesting is you were just talking about, oh God, I hate when my brain does that. What did you just say before the Google thing?
Before the Google thing, laissez-faire capitalism.
That's it. I think that as a whole, I think that Democrats need to start looking at their messaging really differently. Like we've talked about a lot, right? I think that right now, there's like 15 buy-ins to being a Democrat. I think the biggest one should be the economy. Like, I think we all need to agree that billionaires are the problem. Like, I think it's crazy that there's some moderate Democrats out there that are like, no, billionaires should be able to be existing. I don't care what you guys think out there. Billionaires have too much money. If you have $1 billion, that is too much money.
I like to say this all the time, and people always disagree with me, but there's really no such thing as a moral billionaire. There's no reason.
You had to use people as stepping stones to get that high.
Yeah, the only way to get $1 billion is to exploit people, because that's the system that we exist in. But it wasn't always the case that it was like that. We had Teddy Roosevelt, who pioneered antitrust historically in the United States, and broke up a lot of big companies. And look at what happened. We had a booming economy until the Great Depression.
And what was the corporate tax rate then? 97%.
97%.
Trump likes to talk about make America great again. Well, why not return us to the most successful economy at the time? Like, we're one of the most booming economies in the world when we had that corporate tax rate, when people were getting those Christmas bonuses, when people could get vacation days, paid leave. Paid family leave isn't even guaranteed at most jobs anymore. I think that should be guaranteed via the government. But yeah, I think a big problem is right now, Democrats have so many issues, and sometimes, here's a really good example. I think trans issues are really, really important, by the way, and I think that we should never stop fighting for trans issues. But I don't know if you've ever felt like this before. When talking about certain trans issues, you will not be able to convince certain people on them. If someone thinks that they don't want minors to ever have transition surgery or medication that can assist them with their sexual identity stuff, they are going to never agree with you unless you work with them for months and months and months. Just most of the time, it does not end up happening. And so, I think that's fine. Maybe it's okay to go, okay, we disagree there, but you still agree that billionaires are the problem. But you still agree that laissez-faire capitalism is the thing that is causing you the most strife. Because I think that's how we're losing people to the right. Because the right goes, oh, but we totally agree with you about the trans stuff. And they can just sit there and, sit and stew and hate, and then turn that person that's not even anti-trans into a person whose all of their rhetoric is revolved around trans stuff.
Yeah, I think there's definitely certain things. I think I disagree with you a little bit.
Go for it.
There are definitely certain things that are put out there as a distraction, like the whole schools indoctrinating kids, or any kind of cultural scare or anything like that. I like culture war stuff I think for the most part a distraction. However, I do think that the trans issue should be a priority in the cultural wars.
Like I said,
because, that specifically deals with individuals' rights to just exist.
Yeah. Which I also think should be a buy-in for any liberal. I don't even care about progressivism there. As a liberal person, you should accept the rights of others. That's it. End of sentence.
Yeah, and there is some variation. Maybe people are gonna flame on me for this, but I personally don't know if there's any real need for someone under 18 to get bottom surgery.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I would probably agree to some extent, but I also, my opinion sits where science does. Right now, I think science sits very squarely with your opinion. Mm-hmm. But in 20 years from now, if they say that, it turns out that, this drops suicidality massively and makes the patient's quality of life 13 times better, yeah, I'm going to support that.
Yeah, I think that is a good way of doing it.
Or even if it's the opposite, ladies and gentlemen, like I want people to be clear that like this is a very nuanced issue. You know, where like everyone's still learning, scientists are still learning, doctors are still learning, and people may be wrong. Your favorite content creators may be wrong on certain trans issues as more things begin to come out, and you have to be willing to accept that on both sides. If it comes out that these trans conversion camps, because they're gonna be bad, are bad, then we should stop using them, and everyone should accept the science. And
I just wanted to clarify, just so no one hates on me. I do think that there does need to be a precedent set that gender-affirming care for minors should exist.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like
puberty blockers are great.
Yeah, puberty blockers, a breast tissue removal is a big one, and what's really interesting. Maybe to bring us back onto our scripted topics a little bit, but what's really interesting is that Tennessee Supreme Court ruling, what a lot of conservatives don't realize is like if you have a son who's like cisgendered and they have a lot of breast tissue and they want to get it removed,
that's gender affirming care.
That's gender affirming care.
I knew a lot of girls in high school that had like G cups. And they would have incredible back pain, and doctors would literally tell them like, "Yo, you got to get a reduction. Like you're gonna have scoliosis, like literally. Like you're gonna have a question mark spine." And so they would help them out. And like I knew this one girl that went from G to a C, and her life improved drastically. And under those same laws, like you said, those aren't going to be allowed.
So the laws that protect cis or trans people will also protect cis people.
I wanted to clarify my position though, which is I think there are losing positions for the trans argument. For example, when Kamala goes onto a stage and says, "I'm going to provide gender-affirming care for prisoners," I maybe don't say that.
Well, I mean, yeah, maybe it doesn't need to be said, but I think
that's what I mean. It needs to be supported politically.
It needs to be supported. Because just because you're in prison doesn't mean you shouldn't have access to healthcare.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Though my point there is like there are certain things the right knows. They don't have to talk about abortion every single day. You know their opinion on it. You know what I mean? If they could make abortion illegal and the woman getting the abortion able to go get charged for murder and the doctors that did it all charged for murder, they probably fucking would. Is their point. But they don't need to go and say all that because that's the goal they're leading toward. The same way I think progressives need to be better about our messaging. So like maybe we don't need to say like, yeah, we want a totally free system where everything's going to be free in terms of healthcare and like you won't have to worry about paying any money for college. Maybe we just start talking like, or I actually say those are issues we need to run on. But again, like for the trans stuff, like we support and love everybody and we leave it there. We're like, yeah, of course we're going to fight for those rights and we leave it there. You don't discuss specifics in the same way that the conservatives don't discuss specifics on their weaker issues.
I don't know if I quite agree with that. I think that probably the two most important cultural war issues that we need to fix immediately is probably trans rights and probably education.
I think you might be slightly misunderstanding me. What I'm trying to say is, what do Republicans focus on? Do they focus on all of their rhetoric, or do they focus on like 2 or 3 pieces that they hammer on?
Right, but my point is that we also we need to focus on those things.
I agree, but I think when you have 15 nails to hit and the other guys have 2, it makes their messaging so much more concise that it's almost not a contest. And they can make slogans out of our things that we create so easily. Like for example, I saw this one Trump ad against Kamala, where it was like, "She's for the they thems, we're here for you." Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What a fucking slogan. You know what I mean? And again, I'm using trans as a specific example. I agree with you. I do think that trans issues are very important. I think that human rights are very important, and that's what I think that a trans issue is. And in the same way, I think that like racial issues are also very important, though I think DEI is an unpopular position.
It's unpopular, but it's needed.
I agree, but I don't think that progressives should run on their most unpopular positions.
Yeah, but some of their most unpopular positions are necessary.
I agree, but you just pass them anyway. You don't run on them.
But how are you going to pass them if you don't run on them?
By doing the same thing that everyone always does in office. You just sneak other things into your campaign. That's what everybody does.
I mean, I guess.
Did Trump discuss every single thing he was going to do to the tax code?
Yeah, but then
No.
how, like, okay, so this is something you also want to talk about, which kind of segues and away from this, but, and kind of back into it. But there were, how many did you say, 15 million?
15 million Dems that didn't vote.
15 million Dems that didn't vote. What happens if Kamala or the next Democratic nominee decides to not talk about DEI and decides to not talk about trans issues?
What happens if that's the thing where they win?
Well, no, but what I'm saying is, what happens if they don't do that and people don't fill out again? Because that's kind of what happened. There were a lot of progressive issues that I feel like Kamala didn't focus enough on.
Like what?
I don't think that she hit the economy part hard enough. I think she should have put a lot more.
You don't think that she fought the economy from an aggressive progressive stance?
Not to the degree
She
that
literally wanted to do price control, bro.
yeah, that is a good one. But I mean, I think that she should have leaned more into the antitrust stuff that Biden was already doing.
She said she was going to continue doing what Biden did. And she also said that she was going to be the most pro-labor president.
That's a good point.
All I'm saying is, and I agree with you to some extent, I think Kamala's messaging was all over the place, but that's my whole point. When you have 17 nails on the wall, and you have to make sure that you nail all of them in, you have to go expressly and spend time on every single nail. Trump hammers those 2 nails in so hard that they're through 4 different walls. If you understand my analogy.
Oh yeah, I think
They beat that dead horse to the point where the dead horse starts getting up and starts to try to resist them just so they can beat the dead horse some more. I mean,
and then he gets elected off of those 2 nails.
Exactly.
And then is like,
in
Project 2025.
And in the same way, you're right, and that Project 2025 is the real agenda, but they're not fighting on the unpopular stance of Project 2025. Why would they? It's so unpopular. And in the same way, progressives don't need to be fighting from DEI and, we'll use DEI. We don't need to be fighting from our unpopular positions like DEI. We need to be fighting from our popular positions, like healthcare for all, which 70% of Americans support. That should be our everyday rhetoric.
Yeah, so I mean, your argument is that like campaigns should be focused on more populist ideas.
Right. Well, I think Kamala would have probably won if she explained what price control was every single day. Hey, I'm going to go up there and price control these corporations so they can't keep on raising your food prices. If you care about milk and eggs, I'm going to make sure that it stays at a constant $5.
Yeah.
Holy shit! We were
$5 is still too expensive.
I mean, yeah, but I mean, like, in comparison to what some people think it is now, that they would have literally hooted and hollered at that. You know what I mean? I suppose that's my whole point, which is, again, focusing on 2 or 3 things for a campaign, it feels more powerful. You can care about the rest of things, but look at how Trump even speaks about other issues, right? Some, like, weird niche part of the right gets mentioned to him, and he's like, oh yeah, I support them, I don't know too much about it, though. And that's it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I guess you could probably say, like, the same thing about the Obama era. In that, like, Obama campaigned on, like, change and hope.
Yeah.
And then, like, once he got in office, he did things like the Affordable Care Act, LGBTQ marriage.
Well, arguably, he did the opposite of what I'm talking about, right? Because he ran in the way that I would want a modern-day Democrat to run, which is, I want you to go out there, and I want you to, be very strong on the things that you want to do. And then I also want you to go and pass at least 1 or 2 of those things all the way, right? Obama, he went like halfway on, because he was promising universal health care, and we got the ACA.
Yeah, I think he got halfway because he got stiffed by Congress.
He did.
I like, one of the things that, like, I really, every time I watch it, it makes me, like, dead inside, is after one of the school shootings. I can't remember exactly which one it was. Maybe it was Sandy Hook. Was that around the time?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Can I interrupt you just for 1 second? We'll put a little pin in that.
Well, I just want to finish that.
Go ahead. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
But when he after that school shooting, he wanted to pass gun laws on the federal level, and Congress just fucking blocked it. And, like, that shit was sad, man. So I think that's why he went halfway, if I'm being honest.
I agree. Not to bring us back too far to where we just left, but I did want to mention this last thing. Obama is a really good example of what I'm talking about. He had 2 or 3 big issues that he hammered in on really hard. Obama wasn't even pro-gay marriage.
No, he wasn't. Yeah, it's really funny. You'll see the clips of him and Hillary Clinton talking about how they're not for it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And my point is, that should be an issue that's every leftist should agree with, right? Even 20 years ago, every single leftist, for the most part, was like, yeah, of course gay rights should be a thing, of course, da-da-da-da-da. But our politicians didn't even support it because they knew it was a position that was unpopular. So we just did it. And I think that's what progressives should do. Again, if we were focusing on gay issues today, or trans issues now, it's just, you don't campaign on it and you just do it. And I wanted to mention another thing. You mentioned the 15 million Democrats that didn't go out and vote.
Yeah, those bastards. It's one of them guys. Gotta fucking vote in 2026.
Please do.
I'm looking at you.
Though, at the same time,
Just saying.
I understand them. I do get it. And I think it's the fault of Kamala why they didn't go out and vote. Because they were like, okay, the messaging sucks here. Like, she has Dick Cheney on the stage. This is obviously not a progressive woman. And I suppose to some extent I can understand that. And it's because most people don't read in super deep to politics, so maybe they didn't know everything that Kamala was promising. But
yeah. Well, let me put on my conspiracy hat for a moment, if you will.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of cynicism. So like you, I do get the people that didn't vote. So you should still vote.
Always vote, guys.
But I do understand it because I think there's a lot of cynicism because it feels like things haven't changed.
Yeah.
Over the last 40, 50 years. It just feels like things have not changed for the better. And I think a lot of that has to do with big money in political campaigns and just politics in general. I mean, what happens when a super PAC invests, $400 million, $300 million in your campaign?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, once you get in office, just remember that $300 million I gave you for your campaign.
Yeah, I think
And then it's like, well, shit, I can't pass any good laws that will raise corporate taxes or put in price control or whatever it may be. A lot of these populist economic ideas.
I think what you're talking about is, which by the way, I agree. I think the donor class does exist. I think they probably have a good amount of sway over politics. And I don't like to be super conspiracy brained either, but me and you were talking earlier and we said, America's pretty right wing, right?
Yeah.
Consider this with me, we'll walk down this rabbit hole. We have 2 options. You have the Democrats that seem now to be aggressively moving right inside some areas. Or at least they have some areas that they always refuse to never move from. Gun control's a big one. Freedom of speech is another big one. By the way, I'm not anti-free speech, guys. I just don't think you should be able to say disinformation.
Yeah.
Or misinformation. I think both of those should be bad. If I lie about you inside a one-on-one personal case scenario and it hurts your chances with an employer, you can sue me for slander or libel. So I think it's only fair that media corporations are held to the same level of wrongdoing.
Basically a big middle finger to Elon.
Yeah, true.
Is what you just said. Basically, fuck Elon is what you just said.
But I suppose my point there is that, I think Democrats have some things that they refuse to budge on because they're a little more right-wing than probably 90% of the voters, and because a lot of them are old. I think a lot of them truly do believe that, banning guns or even a federal registry of guns is a ridiculous idea. And maybe, that's where I tend to agree with a lot of the further left people, something needs to be shaken up massively for the Democrats, because if we're not even pushing for the things that people care about, like school shootings, trans rights, and everything else, why are we still supporting it?
Yeah.
But to those progressives out there that didn't vote, I would also say, you're going to...
I think we can throw this last log on here, actually.
Yeah.
Honest.
For the progressives that didn't vote, though, I say to you, I really hope it was worth it for your morals, because now you're going to live inside a notably worse world. where a lot of those things that you value are going to start to disappear in front of your eyes. And I hope it's like you say, I hope the Democrats learn their lesson, and I hope that they put up someone better next time. But what if they don't? And now our country's just going down the shitter because you decided not to do anything.
Yeah, I think it is less the fault of the voters and more the fault of the system. Like, let's be honest here, neither one of us likes the two-party system.
No.
That's my opinion, at least. And I think there's a lot of cynicism around it because, like I said, things just haven't changed. So, you know what, in a way, I think maybe I'll walk back my opinion from earlier and say, you know, maybe you're right about the populist economic campaigning strategy.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think populism, that's modern day American politics. And I think it's what the people want. It's not what I want, but I think people want someone to rally behind. You know, in one of our past videos, we even talked about this. We said, you know, there's a lot of talks of like a Joe Rogan of the left or someone else that is, you know, just powerful and charismatic and can, you know, tell all these ideas inside a fun and refreshing way. And we're looking for a populist. We're looking for someone that we can rally behind for the next 8 years.
Yeah. Well, I hope that doesn't put it out.
By the way, if you guys are enjoying the Fireside Chats, but feel free to shoot us a subscribe. Next time, we're definitely going to be trying to live stream this. We tried to live stream this time, and we got that weird YouTube thing where you have to like wait 24 hours.
Oh yeah, it's so annoying. So we decided to do this live stream tonight, and we got 50 subs. We did it. Thank you guys, by the way.
Yeah.
For subscribing. So we got 50 subs, and we're like, shit, man, like we can live stream now. And we went to start the live stream, and apparently we needed a timer, a 24-hour timer to start in order for it to go through.
So I have another thing for us to mention for progressives and Democrats. How do you feel about most progressives not supporting the candidate? I don't even mean interpersonally. I also mean like on podcasts and whatnot. Me and you were talking earlier, and I was talking about how Kamala had to go on the Hey Daddy podcast, something that I had never heard of before. Still don't remember the name of it because it was one of the few podcasts she would go on in which they would support the candidate. I think that's a massive problem.
Yeah, I mean, it is a big problem, and we did touch on it in our election reaction video a little bit, but yeah, I mean, the media is shifting, and the Democrats need to shift with it. It's basically the crux of the issue.
But I suppose, here's my question to you. Imagine they don't shift. Does that mean we just give ground to the Republicans?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we did see that in this last election. To be fair, there were other factors, and I don't think that even had Kamala been on every podcast, or had she done Joe Rogan, I don't think she would have won.
Maybe not.
To be honest, I think it really came down to people just feeling the economic plight and feeling like the Democrats didn't do a good enough job. I disagree with that, but I think that's why, at the end of the day, she did not win. But at the same time, the economy's going to be a little bit different 4 years from now.
It will.
And the media is still going to be shifting. So
I think the problem we'll see, though, is that a lot of these Trump changes, unless they're just so massive, like, for example, we might immediately see changes inside the change of the Department of Education. We might immediately see changes and upticks of, like, food poisoning and that sort of thing, with the FDA being rid of. But the things that we won't see changes in immediately, potentially, is stuff in his tariffs, depending on how long they take to pass, or when he passes them. And my fear is that he will benefit from Joe Biden's economy for the next 4 years. And he'll be able to just sit back and lap it up and laugh it up as all of his policies are reared and engineered to ruin whoever the poor Democrat that gets to come in after.
yeah, that definitely is a scary possibility. But I mean, what's going to happen? I mean, if Trump puts in these tariffs and we don't actually feel the effects for 4 years, then is his base going to be really happy with that?
I actually think, yeah. Because they'll go, look, nothing changed. The Democrats lied.
Oh, God. I hate it so much. Oh, I hate it. You're right, but I don't want you to be right. Like, my point was, like, you know, they voted for him. They want his tariffs. So wouldn't they want them to take effect immediately? But, like, no, you're right. They're going to be like, look, the economy's fine. Everything's good.
So I was having a conversation with a close friend of mine, and I won't dox any information, obviously. So, but I'm sitting in the store of his, and he's talking about how excited he is for the Trump tariffs. And because, you know, he's like, finally, you know, the economy's really going to start getting better. And I was like, dude, everything in your store is Chinese. It's a vape shop. And I'm like, everything in this store is Chinese. What are you talking about? Your vapes are Chinese, your glass is Chinese, the companies you get your electronics from are Chinese. Everything in your store is just about to get 10% more expensive. And he goes, well, I could just buy American. And I go, well, why don't you buy American now?
Because it's more expensive.
Because it's 3 times the price. Yeah, so he doesn't buy it because he would have to charge a ridiculous amount of money otherwise. So what exactly is going to change? Well, you're still going to get those same Chinese and Mexican agriculture products. You're still going to get the crude oil from Canada. We're just going to spend more because we can't exist without it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what economists have been saying since Trump brought up the idea of tariffs. And we've been saying that, and yet Republicans want to Google what a tariff is the night of the election.
Good Lord.
I mean, it's insane.
Yeah.
I think the second log is just about to catch.
It's looking great. We should have brought out some marshmallows, had some mid-podcast s'mores.
Yeah, that would be sick. Maybe I want to switch this top log a little bit to the left here. Or to my left. To your right.
Yeah, a little fire poker would be great. Speaking of poking the fire, we were talking earlier about the CEO that got shot.
Oh yeah. Yeah, lots of fire there.
Well, not only fire, there's assuming it to be a wildfire spreading over the internet. With that CEO being shot, there's suddenly a cacophony of memes of people essentially calling the assassin a hero, and how some people don't want to go out and report this guy. How even if they knew, they would act like, you know, they, I don't know shit, and all that other stuff, right?
Yeah, the memes are.
They are really funny.
Yeah, I mean, I saw one meme that was like, tell me why this CEO shooting has the same energy as the Ocean Gate event, and they're totally right. I think what it really comes down to is the everyday person, the people that are making the memes and posting them online, they have zero sympathy for these billionaires.
Yeah.
Absolutely zero. And I totally agree.
Yeah. I don't think the rhetoric is at all to be, it shouldn't be celebrated, but I totally understand people's frustrations. I mean, you gotta think, how many of these people have had a family member or themselves denied? I've been denied for insurance reasons before at a hospital. It's terrifying. You know what I mean?
I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I think it's kind of worth celebrating. I know that's problematic. I know it's problematic.
Well, can I dig on you a little bit there?
I mean, listen, I think if someone came up to me and they're like, yeah, I think we should kill X, blah, 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 whatever. That's probably not a good idea. Like, we were all joking when Trump got shot and whatnot. But at the end of the day, we all knew that was a bad thing that would have happened.
Right.
I think since this has already happened and the shooter was successful in killing him, it's like, okay, I think we're allowed to laugh at it. I think we're allowed to make fun of this.
Yeah, I think you're allowed to laugh and make fun. God knows I'm not trying to be joke police on the goddamn progressives. Like, go off, guys. The Republicans can say whatever they want. But I do think that, one thing I'll say is that I don't think that it accomplishes anything. And I think that people like celebrating it like it's some end of an era is kind of foolhardy. He's just going to get replaced with another board member. And that's why I think the actual political fight is much more important than whatever fight that some people might be encouraged to take onto the streets with a firearm, knife, machete, or gun.
No, I definitely don't think that we should be inspiring anyone to go out and commit any political acts of violence.
Yeah, obviously, yeah. I wasn't trying to imply that you were also. What I'm simply saying is that I think that I would prefer a left that rallies behind the ideas of, man, I really wish we could have locked that guy up for all the things he did, for all his crimes against humanity that he did, for all the people and children that have directly died because of this person's actions.
Right, but the counterpoint to that would be, was he going to get arrested?
No.
Were there going to be any consequences? Because there haven't been for any other insurance company.
I think that's also a real conversation that needs to happen inside America. You know, we were just talking about how, you know, Democrats sometimes aren't progressive enough on the issues that really matter. I think sometimes we see that time and time again on labor issues, right? I think Joe Biden's the first actual pro-labor president I've seen, maybe, and he still has some areas he could work on too. But I remember inside a couple of instances, like factory fires and that sort of thing, and being anti-union in general throughout time. And Democratic presidencies, people just are very anti-labor. You know, we've been promised $15 an hour minimum wage for so long now that the $15 an hour minimum wage wouldn't even be enough anymore.
No. I'll tell you what. Not to put myself out there or anything, but I make more than $15 an hour, and it's not enough to live. I'll tell you that. I mean, we do live in a populated city. We do live in an urban area, but why would that mean that we should have a lower standard of living?
Yeah.
That shouldn't mean that we should have a lower
You definitely shouldn't have to skip meals. You definitely shouldn't have to live 3 deep inside one apartment just so that you can afford a place, right? Like, I think a lot of young men and women are feeling this right now, especially at our age groups of dating for finances.
Oh yeah.
You know, I think that's becoming all the more popular, where it's like, maybe you really like this girl back in high school, but now people are moving in together and they go, I can't afford to break up with my girlfriend.
Ooh. That's rough.
That's insane.
That is rough. I mean, yeah, I think that is unfortunately the reality.
Yeah.
Is that in 99% of counties in the United States, there is absolutely no way that one person can support themselves and afford an apartment.
All $15 an hour.
Afford a car.
And be insured, have insurance on the car, insurance on yourself, dental insurance, eye insurance, no shot.
Yeah, I mean there was that MIT study where they calculated what the living wage standards would be by county in every state in the United States. I don't think there was a single one that met that living wage standard as their minimum wage.
Yeah, I don't doubt it at all. I mean, considering some states still sit around like $9, and our federal one is like $7.25.
There are still states that have no state minimum wage. Now, granted, it's few. I think it was probably less than 7. That's probably worth a fact check.
That's disgusting.
But there still are states that have no state minimum.
Well, they would still have to listen to the federal law on it.
But the federal law is $7.25,
which is abysmal.
Which is a bit dude. You can't buy a fucking Big Mac for.
You can't even justify hiring a high schooler for $7.25.
See, ooh, all right. If you want to go off script, we can go off script.
Yeah.
But I have an opinion on that. Justifying. Listen, I know workforce market, this, that, more experience you have, the more you should be paid. Yes, I agree. However, I don't think it's okay to pay teenagers exploitative wages just because of their lack of experience. I think the standard needs to be higher. And all these people will be like, well, they don't have the experience.
Then don't hire them yet.
Why should they be? Well, no, I don't think that's the answer. I think that the wage standards just need to be higher.
I mean, yeah, I agree. I mean, I think first off, I think the whole argument of like, these are jobs intended for students is bullshit. Like, why is McDonald's open during the day? Why is it open during school days then? Why are there 40-year-old men working there? Why do you have systems, why do you have reward?
The cat wants to say hello.
The cat's trying to get in. She has some political opinions.
Hey, go ahead and pick her up. Bring her in here.
Come here, hon.
She hates being picked up.
There she is. The little fluff button. But yeah, I think it's just like we were saying, you know, there's so many issues when it comes to be it education, be it economy, be it whatever, that people are just lacking focus right now. And I really think the best thing that we can really do for all of them is, on any of these particular issues, just focus up. Be it, the economy, be it whatever, whatever regulations or changes that the Democrats need to propose, we need to start talking about them now. We need to start getting someone campaigning now. There needs to be talk about ways to fight Project 2025 and its spread now. Not 4 years from now where we start to try to build up a candidate. No, it has to happen now. Not to toot our own horn, but with events like this, with people sitting around and having conversations either on live streams, podcasts, on YouTube, or just going on channels so you can get to learn about these candidates.
Not only that, but talking to your families, talking to your friends. I have a friend, he's not very politically involved, but whenever he and I sit down and talk about politics, he's like super interested and super curious, because I've gotten into it a lot, obviously. And I think if those people got a little bit more involved and then started talking, and I think that really starts with people who are informed talking to their friends. Hopefully, maybe me having that conversation with him, being like, maybe you should consider looking into politics a little more. It's kind of important. I know it's shitty. I know it's like doom and gloom half the time. But it is important. If we don't have people voting for the future of this country, we don't have a future.
Yeah, and one thing's for sure: if you think politics are bad and you don't go out and vote, or you don't want to go out and get politically informed, yet you know politics and the state of politics are bad, why would you want to march off into something you know is bad without the information?
Yeah.
You got to fill out your monster manual for the creatures you're going to fight. Otherwise, you're in for a bad way. You need to know the beast that you're going to be against, otherwise you're going to be taken by surprise. I think a lot of states right now, if I was a young woman and I didn't want children anytime soon, I would heavily consider moving out of Texas.
Out of Florida.
Out of Florida.
Out of Georgia.
Have you heard about Texas's highway bill that they just proposed? Greg Abbott's new highway bill?
Fucking Greg Abbott, dude.
Have you heard about it?
Greg Abbott, if you're watching, you're not. But if you happen to, fuck you.
And you're a traitor.
Fuck you.
He literally threatened to shoot at the federal government. How this guy still is employed as a governor, I'll never understand.
Bro's like, yeah, you know what, Donald Trump? I think you can take your imprisonment camps here. I think you can,
I like the sound of immigration camps.
Yeah, go ahead, bring them here.
It almost rhymes with internment. But no, his new highway law is if women try to use the interstate highway system to leave the state for the express purpose of having an abortion, they might be criminally pursued. They'll be pulled over, and it's going to be charged as a manslaughter case, I believe. Absolutely insane. That's insane.
I wonder what would happen if you let's say you lived in the middle of Texas. Let's say you lived in maybe not the middle, but let's say you lived in Dallas. Dallas is kind of far away from any of the other states, right?
Mm-hmm. Texas is just giant in general.
Yeah. So what would happen if you started on the highway and got 90% of the way there, and then got off the highway and took back roads there?
I think the idea of it would be, that's actually a really good point. That's just gonna have so many. It won't pass. If it passes, I'll be blown away.
I know that sounds like a weird question, but I can't help but think.
No, that's actually a very good one, because I don't have an answer for you. I don't think they thought about it that deeply.
I don't think they thought about it that deeply. They're you know what? Yeah, fuck them.
They're saying if we catch you on the interstate highway while you're more than 6 weeks pregnant, we're gonna assume that you're getting an abortion.
Isn't that unconstitutional in some way?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say before. Is what it immediately reminds me of. And leftists love to bring everything back to this, but here we go. remind me of civil rights. You know, when slaves tried to run away from their states, and you know, the states at the time, we had the Articles of Confederation and things that were more listened to, and states that felt very strongly.
Not the Articles of Confederation.
Yeah.
That's earlier.
Meaning states had a stronger sense of state rights and that sort of thing. Back at the time, things were run a little bit more independently than they are now. You were probably more loyal to your state than you were your country.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact name of the law, but there was a law passed that said that new states, we have to have an equal number of slave states and free states.
Yep.
But yeah, it definitely does remind you of that, of how we had free states and slave states, and people would be able to go after their slaves that escaped.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say the runaway slaves bills. It reminds me almost verbatim of that. And basically what it seems like is, why would you be able to prevent me from going to a land in which I want to seek their laws? Especially since now that we're all free, I'm not anyone's property. Why can you prevent me from going to move to a place that I want to go and seek their laws? Doesn't that seem like that should be against everything about the whole state idea?
Yeah, I mean, there's a story about a woman from Texas who didn't use her credit cards, turned off her cell phone location and everything, and went to another state to get an abortion. She had to pay in cash for the abortion because she didn't want it on her credit cards, which is actually insane. I think maybe the Republican defense would be, when those people aren't going to move there, they're going there to get an abortion that's illegal in their state. But Jesus Christ.
But also that's so dumb, because if I go into your state then, without wanting to move there, but I bring my legal weed from California into a state that has illegal marijuana, what's going to happen to me? I'm going to get arrested.
So the laws from your home state don't apply.
Exactly. So why would they apply when I'm trying to leave?
Yeah, it's not very consistent. I will agree with you there. Oh man, I hope that law changes.
I think it might just. I think that's pretty much most of my topics, to be honest. Unless you want to rehash on anything else, I think it might be good to go over everything we went over today, though. We had a couple of disagreements this time.
Yeah, I think the CEO thing is important. And I think maybe there's something to be, there's some more to be said there, which is that a lot of political movements have started with riots and with political or social uprisings, And while I don't necessarily agree that we should be killing people, I think the people are fed up, man. The people are tired of this shit, and they have to have some way to have their voices heard. And so while I don't necessarily agree that he should have been killed, there was no other consequences. There weren't going to be any other consequences. And at the end of the day, something's going to give. Something's going to give. People are fed up with this shit. And I mean,
I agree, but I think I want you to consider a couple of things. We were talking, this is off stream, but we were talking a little bit about BLM earlier. Me and you both agree with BLM's messages, despite the riots, right?
Yeah.
Do you think the riots helped BLM's messages or hurt it? They hurt it.
Well, I mean,
they hurt it. Undeniably, they hurt the message of BLM.
Well, I think there is a little bit of an argument there in that
it might have got more eyes on it, but it hurt the message.
Had the riots not happened, it wouldn't have gained the traction that it had.
Mm-hmm.
And had it not gained the traction that it had gained, it wouldn't have been talked about on a national stage. So,
what legislation came from BLM?
Well, that's a good point. I mean, I don't think that,
I think they wasted the stage that they had.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think, unfortunately, it was due to the riots why a lot of their rhetoric got so misheard. Once you were violent just a couple of times, people don't want to trust you anymore. You were talking before about how a lot of movements are based in violence. Well, I'd say to some extent. Like Malcolm X's most famous protest with Black Panthers was in California, where they all bought all the guns from the gun stores and open carried assault rifles, buff-ass black dudes that people were terrified of in the 70s, walking around with these big-ass blicks the same day California got gun laws made. But imagine how different it would have been. They're like, time to get fucking heard, and they start blasting people. We couldn't support that. We wouldn't be talking about it today as some grand win over the system. We'd be talking about it as a wasted opportunity where they could have done something and instead they decided to swing low and kill people.
I think there is a little bit of a difference in this specific scenario in that with the BLM riots with the Black Panthers, that was a social uprising.
Mm-hmm.
This was the act of one gunman.
Yeah, I agree.
Who may or may not have been hired, or this may have been some type of personal vendetta. We don't know. It just happened.
In the same way, if I put that back onto you from a conservative perspective, I think I did this to you before as well, but I'll say it here. If a conservative did the same thing, so they killed the leader of Planned Parenthood in the middle of the street, and conservatives started celebrating the death of them and making memes about it, and they're like, well, they were responsible for the abortion of 7 million babies, so they killed 7 million people. So that was like the biggest, obviously you don't believe their rhetoric, but they also don't care about your rhetoric on our side, where we're like, due to his inaction on insurance and denying so many people insurance and healthcare due to their lack of insurance, he killed so many people indiscriminately. We don't believe theirs, they don't believe ours, right? Now my point is, we would say it's bad if Republicans were celebrating the death of the Planned Parenthood person.
Yeah.
And I think rightfully so. I'd say it's very bad that you're celebrating the death of anyone. And we feel very good about it. And in the same way, I think the left should always try to be posturing to some degree. But actually, this might lead into the last point, which you might actually be a little more right on, which is perhaps we should change our angle. What I'm speaking is, I'm speaking a lot more like an establishment dim. They go high, they swing low, we swing high, right? Perhaps we have to change up that angle slightly. There was an old term on the internet called the scumbag left, where you were more argumentative, you acted more like the right to some degree, where you ignored some issues in order to really press on others, where you had this laissez-faire sort of attitude where, like, even if you get called out somewhere else, you just press on the things that they're weaker on, so you just go back, you know what I mean? You ignore your weak positions by just outright ignoring them, calling it fake news or whatever else you can do to discredit them. Well, I don't love a lot of those things on paper. I can actually see it being very successful, because I think it's what people want to see. People want to see political owns nowadays, and I don't think we have someone that's really willing to own. You think Kamala Harris would own Trump? Or Biden's gonna like drop a sick own on anybody during the debate? Like, no, you know what I mean? It's gonna take someone to be like, yeah, this is coming from the rapist, by the way. You know what I mean? It has to be like that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it does unfortunately have to be like that. I think a lot of it is because Donald Trump. I mean, if you look at like the Obama Mitt Romney presidential
So respectful.
And Mitt Romney's like, I know it's your anniversary today, Obama. I'm sorry you're spending it here with me, and it's kind of like it's kind of jokey. I also get the I think it's maybe not the worst thing because while I don't like that Trump pioneered it, it's also I can see why people like it because a lot of that stuff felt fake before, and now it feels more real. So I can see both sides on that one.
Well, plus it's more interesting. I mean, like you were talking about our friends before that are like vaguely sort of like willing to listen to politics but not very interested in it. Or if we had a WWE match every single night where two guys are fucking screaming at each other until both of them go red, you might tune in every night. Yeah. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, there's just not a place for that right now. There's not like a political circle where like ideas can be had, but there is. It's just on YouTube, it's online, and that's what these like right circles get to do. And our left circles, unfortunately, while I do think they're great at debating each other and they're very good at making each other look bad, it's like very unique ways because we're so willing to, as liberals, come after progressives, and as progressives, so willing to come after liberals whenever their inaction is too high. But I don't think that we're willing to just attack those terrible ideas and build up our good ones. Like I think liberals and progressives should shake hands and be like, lower taxes for poor people, higher taxes for wealthy people, and leave it at that. You know what I mean?
Well, maybe we should leave it at that.
Hey guys, I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. Me and David worked really hard on trying to get this podcast working. This is actually our third iteration. And if you guys enjoyed it, be sure to drop a like, a subscribe, and a comment if you got this far. And definitely feel free to join the next live stream, guys. It's going to be a lot more fun when we can talk individually to you guys and maybe even have some call-ins.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting. It was kind of sad that we didn't get the live stream this time. It would have been really nice to have live viewers to interact with the chat, enjoy the fire. But speaking of the fire, we're going to chill here for a little while, let the fire die down, maybe shoot the shit a little bit more. But if you guys, like you said, if you enjoyed the video, hit that like, hit that subscribe, and we will catch you in the next one.
Peace.